All right, so welcome to all of you who are on live with us from around the country and possibly around the world. Today, I am Laura Lee Scott, Director of Pacifica Online, and I am really thrilled and excited to be introducing this weekend workshop to all of you, and in particular, the work of Patricia Ann Elwood. You know, one of the things that has me so excited about this workshop is Patricia and I have been talking before this started. This is an experiential workshop. And, you know, when you think about the work of C.G. Jung, really his laboratory was the creative experiential world where he was drawing in the sand and drawing pictures and talking to the pots and pans in his kitchen. I mean, Jungian psychology, long before it was any kind of intellectual theorized methodology, that's what it was. It was a man who had the courage to engage with his own creative unconscious. And in the Jungian world, we tend to connect primarily dreams as being the avenue through which we can understand the language of the creative unconscious. But as Patricia is going to be teaching us and walking you through, there are many different creative avenues to access the wisdom and the symbolic language of the creative unconscious. Let me tell you a little bit about Patricia. Patricia Ann Elwood is a Jungian analyst with 40 years of research into the realms of the personal and collective unconscious. She is an author, lecturer, seminar leader, and adventurer. She is a postgraduate of the C.G. Jung Institute in Zurich, Switzerland, in analytical psychology for children, adolescents, and for adults. She lives and practices in Lausanne, Switzerland. She is passionate about peoples and belief systems and has been since a very young age. She's traveled the world, especially going beyond the beaten tracks to discover many indigenous peoples and to be witness to that place and space of deeper reverence where we are all universally connected. Spontaneous drawing, as prescribed by Jung himself, has been a means of contact with the people she has met of different races, over and beyond cultural differences, language barriers, and religious beliefs. So I am so excited. Patricia, thank you so much for what you are going to be leading us in and through today and again next weekend. And welcome.
Thank you so much, Laura Lee. Very excited about what you just said, bringing Jung into the experiential level. And I'm thrilled to be working on a USA platform. Because yes, it was my homeland, and I enjoy it very, very much, the exchange. Spontaneous drawing is becoming more and more recognized. I am delighted about that because it brings Jung to the marketplace. Jung had a dream a year before he died where he was not in his study talking to the great thinking minds of the world, but where he was actually on the marketplace talking to a large crowd of people. And he found that the crowd were in rapt attention to everything he said. And it was a dream that allowed him actually to write man in his symbols. He was asked to write something for everybody, not just the intellectual world. And at first he had said no to that, but then after this dream he said yes. So I think Jung would be so pleased if we can bring him to the marketplace. And I think spontaneous drawing, I mean, I've proven it for myself. It's accessible to everybody at every age, beyond religion, culture. I've drawn with Inuits, I've drawn with shamans in the backwaters of the mountains of Asia. I've drawn with lumberjacks in the northern Canada. I've drawn with peoples all over the world. And it is a totally universal access to the psyche. So that's what's been exciting. They're never two drawings the same. So it is limitless as an approach, as a method. It's limitless. And yes, we will definitely find individually some revelations during this course. I certainly hope so. So I think we will just begin. And then at certain moments I'll stop, and if anybody has questions, then we can discuss, and then we can continue. There will be a break at one point. As I was saying to Laurelie, I live with a wood fire, so I have to push my fire at one point. My dog is with the neighbor because she can't sit for a 3-hour session. She can take 2, but after 2, that's enough for her. So she went to visit the neighbor this evening. Okay, so let's get started and see where we go. I'm going to do PowerPoint, sharing the screen. So here we are. I call it a window on the soul because that's where we're going to gradually. So the approach to spontaneous drawing is based on the structure and dynamics of the psyche according to Carl Jung. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The aim of spontaneous drawing is to make the darkness conscious. So this is what Jung says. This was his beginning with drawing. My fear of failure and my sense of smallness in the face of the vast world around me created in me not only a dislike, but a kind of silent despair, which completely ruined school for me. In addition, I was exempted from drawing class on the grounds of utter incapacity. This, in a way, was welcome to me since it gave me more free time. But on the other hand, it was a fresh defeat, since I had some facility in drawing, although I did not realize that it depended essentially on the way I was feeling. I could draw only what stirred my imagination. But I was forced to copy prints of Greek gods with sightless eyes. And when that wouldn't go properly, the teacher obviously thought I needed something more naturalistic and set before me the picture of a goat's head. This assignment I failed completely, and that was the end of my drawing class. So yes, he tells the story of a child who didn't have the adequate mirroring for his particular innate talent, as many children know, as many of you know. But despite that, Jung wasn't deterred. He actually drew, painted, and sculpted eventually in stone all his life. He was 8 years old when he was exempted from drawing class. But we know that he had an extremely refined talent with pencil, brush, and eventually chisel. Not only in the images, in the variety of images. The variety of images extraordinary. Endless imagination he produced. So yes, we know that Jung was very refined in this activity, and every stage of his own self-exploration was accompanied by the taking up of pen, pencil, brush, or chisel, and plunging once again into this zone of unknowing, so as to allow the unconscious to have its way through spontaneity. Jung was always seeking to access the unconscious through spontaneous activities, which he actually began in childhood, when he was gathering stones and building villages and landscapes. He admits he didn't always know where this would lead him, but he instinctively felt that despite a lack of rational understanding, he could follow the intuition that his drawings were highly significant. During the period in his life when he lost all outer orientation, he turned inwards and began drawing mandalas every day. He was actually down the road here from where I live when he was drawing mandalas every day. It was during his time in the Swiss Army, when he was taking care of English prisoners of war. He was quite near where I live now. And at one point I moved into a village, and a neighbor came knocking on my door. And when I opened the door, she saw the picture of Jung behind, and she said, "Oh, you know Jung?" I said, "Yes. And she said, oh, I knew him as a child. And he had lived in her village. And she told me all about him, this great man that used to go to the local dairy and choose his cheeses with particular attention, and so on. So it was a synchronicity, this neighbor knocking on my door, who had known Jung as a child. So his own methods, Jung's own methods, produced a template for his patients, friends, and collaborators. He encouraged all those around him to follow a similar path towards the self through all forms of spontaneous imaginations, drawings, and paintings. Many of his friends and contemporaries became passionate followers, involved in what was then an exciting avant-garde movement. Jung's work and research provided a paradigm shift into an innovative approach where new ground was broken and hitherto mysterious dimensions were brought to light. It was a very exciting time. And the Bild Archive in Zurich, C.G. Jung Institute, it's the picture gallery. There are thousands of drawings and paintings that come from these collaborators and patients of Jung's and the other analysts. So Jung chiseled in stone. This is at Bollingen. And sometimes he had surprises. The stone produced something that he didn't expect. And this is the spirit in stone that came to meet him, which was a surprise to him. Ambiguo duplicitio is ambiguous duplicity. I've tried to translate this. It doesn't translate very logically for me. It's called this dented thing. However, this was a trickster figure that came to meet Jung from the stone. So spontaneous comes from its Latin root sponte, meaning acting voluntarily from natural prompting, coming freely without premeditation or effort. The spontaneous act puts one in contact with the unconscious, the source within, which is the matrix for intuition and creativity. The unconscious is also the realm of progression, auto-regulation, transformation, and healing. So, why spontaneous drawing? Because it reveals what the rational mind cannot reveal, because it provides a direct access to the unconscious and stimulates instinct and creativity. Anyone can participate in spontaneous drawing. I usually say from 3 to 103, most people are willing to draw. It's beyond age, language, cultural differences, and even beyond pathology. We've actually had Alzheimer patients doing spontaneous drawings with extraordinary revelations. It entails the use of basic materials, simple, attractive, and accessible for all. It's an excellent medium for entering into a relationship with the other, has a therapeutic effect, releases unconscious blockages, has limitless possibilities, and there are never, ever two drawings alike. So Jung attributed the greatest importance to the image itself, believing that once emotions take form in images, the conscious mind can actively participate in recycling the energies attached to the images and subsequently return to a state of equilibrium. To the extent that I managed to translate the emotions into images, that is to say, find the images which were concealed in the emotions, I was inwardly calmed and reassured. What was convincing and credible about Jung was he was a man who always admitted his confusion, his suffering, his depressions, his own blockages in life. He was a man who always admitted that, and that gave him tremendous credibility. And it's really important to realize that once we can translate the emotions, what we're feeling, the emotions, especially disturbing emotions, into images, we can actively really participate in recycling the energy attached to these emotions. That is so important. Someone hears. I have someone. Someone wanted to say something. So I have someone in the discussion here. Okay. Are we okay this far? Chateau Day in Switzerland, yes. Nicole, where's Nicole? It was in Chateau Day, yes. Nicole, yes. Do you live in Switzerland? Okay, you're down the road from me then, are you?
I live in Châteaudet.
Okay. So, did the people in Chateau Day know that Jung lived there? Where are you? Nicole.
Yeah, I don't know everybody knows, but it is quite known. Yeah, he has lived here 1 year with his family.
That's right. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. He was just down the road. That's where he did the mandalas every day. That's where he had the experience of the mandala, the monad that I am. That's a sentence that millions of people have read and nobody has understood. But maybe we'll get to what the monad that I am really means. Okay, thank you for that. That's refreshing for me to know that someone recognizes that Jung was in Chateau Day in the French-speaking part of Switzerland. Of course, he spoke fluent French. Val is a town, a bilingual town where he lived, and it's German and French speaking. So here we go. So yes, I want people to understand that you can take any emotion, find the image in the emotion, and change the energy. So important. And this spontaneous drawing reveals some preoccupation on the part of the unconscious. The aim is to acquire a conscious participation in what is revealed, or as Jung says, constellated. This conscious attention activates a dynamic in which the unconscious responds to the ego. We may refer to this as ego-unconscious dialogue. People don't realize that the unconscious reacts. Very often the ego has to give the starting impulse for some reason that I don't know, but I recognize that the ego has to set the process in motion, and the unconscious responds. And it's really important to know that it activates the dynamic process, even in depression. We will get to an example of depression later. Spontaneous drawing from a Jungian perspective is not confined to any age group. It's universal, can be addressed to any person, any age, sex, cultural background, or religion. It goes far beyond childish expression. The analysis of spontaneous drawing is an art and a science. As an art, this approach requires experience based on feeling and intuition and accumulated perception. As a science, it requires knowledge of the structure and dynamics of the psyche, which is the background from which the spontaneous drawing proceeds. It's an art and a science. All spontaneous drawings contain their conscious and unconscious aspects. To understand the language of the spontaneous drawing, one must have knowledge of structure and dynamics of the psyche, spatial orientation in drawings, and an understanding of symbolism. Jung says in his famous red book, which I prefer to call Liber Novus, because he called it himself Liber Novus, the wealth of the soul exists in images. But he also goes on to say, scholarliness is not enough. There is knowledge of the heart that gives deeper insight. It is this knowledge of the heart that one must open to so as to be able to grasp the mind in the background, which is expressing itself through the drawing. This is an acquired art that goes with self-development and empirical experience. Letting go of the thinking mind to reach the level of the irrational pre-logical mind is what Jung had to do to gain a deeper knowledge of psychic processes, as what he advocates. When do we apply spontaneous drawing in any difficulty? When the thinking critical mind is overloaded, as many people find they have that. When caught in emotions that can't be appeased on their own, in depression. When wanting to connect with one's own unconscious, illustrating dreams, very powerful, illustrating dreams by drawing. For assessment purposes, for self-discovery. So this is volume 5 of Jung at the beginning. Jung speaks of 2 kinds of thinking. Directed thinking follows an intense train of thought. We're thinking in words, we begin talking to ourselves, directed outwards into the outside world. Directed or logical thinking is reality thinking, a thinking which is adapted to reality. It has, in addition, the peculiarity of causing fatigue. I don't know if people recognize that too much thinking actually does cause fatigue. Fantasy thinking, when we wander from the subject and let our thoughts go their own way, if the slackening of attention continues, we gradually lose all sense of the present and the fantasy gains the upper hand. There was a time in the ancient world when fantasy was a legitimate truth that enjoyed universal recognition. Yes, we've actually been cut off. We've been cut off in our evolution by the Age of Enlightenment, middle of the 17th century, when Enlightenment obscured intuition and feeling function. Everything had to be rational, provable, concrete, practical, and then faculties of intuition and feeling were repressed. So now our planet is urgently in need of these faculties of intuition and feeling. We cannot be just devoted to the rational thinking mind. We have all faculties and we need to use them all, but not repress some in favor of others. So that's my viewpoint on that. I am I. Yes, the monad that I am, but the monad that I am is something that ran very, very deep. It's a possibility to experience that, but not everybody has that experience. Any questions at this point? We all okay? So, okay. So now I'd like you just to realize that the psyche is constantly creating spontaneous imagery. We're not usually aware of the natural imagery producing function of our own psyches. That is the only single thing that you get from this course is a connection to the natural imagery producing function in your own psyches, then you've really acquired something important. So I invite you to close your eyes and bring to mind a bear. Now, when you see a bear, first of all, you're going to see his color, his posture. You're going to see where he is. You're going to see what kind of bear it is. See if he's alone, not alone. See what he's doing. that everything that you see with this bear comes from the natural imagery producing function of the psyche. Jung prescribes you should write down everything you see. Because when you write down everything you see connects to the bear, then you're becoming even more conscious of the imagery. Is there anyone who cannot see a bear? It's important to become conscious of the natural imagery producing function of the psyche. Okay, we shall continue. So this is the map of the psyche. As the body has an anatomy and a physiology, the psyche has a structure and a dynamics. So we have the conscious sphere, we have the unconscious, we have the ego. In the conscious sphere, we have two basic attitudes, introversion, extroversion. They are innate but not inherited. We have the four basic functions, thinking, feeling, intuition, and sensation. If the personal unconscious, the collective unconscious, and the psychoid spheres. So today we're going to take care of the personal unconscious, and next Saturday we're going to take care of the collective unconscious. It's a typical extroverted attitude in a drawing, like my little Zoe. We get a typical introverted attitude in a drawing. It's very obvious. So enough personal unconscious contains all the personal experiences of the individual's life, contains all that has been learnt and acquired through growth and development, stocks subliminal perceptions, and harbors emerging themes that are tending towards consciousness. That's our personal unconscious. It's under the other side of the ego. So how do we begin? We do just as Jung did. We suspend all judgment, get beyond the critical mind, let the pencils do what they want to do, trust your own personal inspiration without knowing where it will lead you, and don't criticize the images that arise spontaneously. So come to a first exercise. Draw a tree, your tree. 3 minutes. Nicole, you finished? Are you working as a therapist in Chateau d'Ay? You're still muted. Your microphone's on.
I'm an astrologer.
You're an astrologer. Oh, great. What course have you followed?
Liz Green in London.
Voila, yes, yes, yes. Okay, great. You know Hiba, do you?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. She's a colleague in Lausanne. Very interesting. Okay, I think that's enough for the tree drawing. Now, Jung actually wrote about over 300 pages on the tree. Philosophical tree, the alchemical tree, and all kinds of aspects of the tree. But he loved trees. Trees in particular were mysterious and seemed to be direct embodiments of the incomprehensible meaning of life. For that reason, the woods were the place where I felt closest to its deepest meaning and to its awe-inspiring workings. We know that Jung spent an awful lot of time in nature. It was his preference all his life as a child, but also he built Bollingen for that reason, to be in nature. So the tree drawing, the tree is not just a tree, it's a symbol. And the drawing of the tree is a symbolic drawing. It's a drawing of a life story, a process of development as lived by the psyche of the person. It's therefore symbolically speaking the tree of life, as has been reflected in other expressions of the collective unconscious, such as in myths, fairy tales, and religious motifs. So drawing a tree is very important. I'm going to give you the checklist for the tree. Actually, I'm going to give it to you, and we can send it to you on the emails. I've got to ask Laurelie about that, so that you have the checklists in your files. So from base to treetop, the tree represents the growth from the base to the summit or birth to the present. So if this person is 40 years old, this would be 20 years old, 30 years old, 40 years old. Dividing the tree from base to tip gives an idea of the age or stage in development when events occurred and registered on the psyche. Checklist. How is the tree planted on the ground? Has it got roots or not? Is it well centered? Is it sloping towards the right or left? How many branches are there? Is the number of branches symbolically meaningful? The roots are the basis of the tree of life. They may indicate where initial trauma lies, birth trauma, postnatal complications. They represent the sense of security, the healthy contact with the earth, life, and the unconscious. Nests or holes in the tree trunk symbolize times of halted development, significant events, which may have occurred for inner or outer reasons. Times of illness, ruptures in the process of development due to major moves, divorce, loss of parents, or perhaps the birth of another child in the family. Now, the branches may be split or forked. Does the number of branches correspond to the age of the person or a time of rupture or significant events? We look for points of rupture in the tree, which we call times of difficulty, loss of someone close, separations, divorces, and traumatic events. Now, I'm going to give you this list so that you can practice trees during the week. Fruit should be counted as they correspond to the years of the person's, to see if they correspond to the years of the person's life. Numbers which repeat themselves may represent ages when changes or traumatic events were recorded. Treetop, is it contracted, stunted, or too weak? Is it expansive, in full bloom, stretching up and outwards, expressing the person's openness of the personality? Seasons are important. A Christmas tree in June may represent a symbolic turning point in development. colors. Is the tree colorful or is it drawn in black pencil? In which case there may be a defense against exposing oneself. It also symbolizes depression, lack of energy for life, or a defense against emotions. If you, I always have a block of white paper on the desk and a choice of crayons, colored pencils, felt tip pens, and an ordinary gray pencil. And people choose. If someone chooses only gray pencil, then we consider it's a defense against exposing themselves, a defense against emotion. May also be just a state of depression. So I want you to practice, gather as many tree drawings as you can during the week. And you can analyze your own tree, of course. You could find out with the checklist what you've drawn in your own tree. Let's see if someone has had some revelations. So I'll just show you a few examples of tree drawings. This child is 5. He came from America to Switzerland. But we can see that there's no correspondence between the life he had in America and the life he had in Switzerland. In fact, he didn't adapt. And the family did return to Florida, where he was from. We can have a tree growth without development, no expansion, no development, what we call stunted growth. Sometimes attempts at expansion have occurred, but have not been brought to fruition. This is 12-year-old Tommy. Tommy had lived only in institutions. He'd never had a family life. And he had never adapted in any of the institutions. When I met him, it was very briefly. He was going on to a 4th institution. But you can see that his tree is poor, no roots, no growth and development, just 3 attempts at life, orientation in life. Now this is Annie. She's 14 years old. Annie was one of those angry young girls. When she came to me, she had been in a therapeutic center for 3 years, and she was very angry. She didn't want to do anything. She was very resistant, and I just passed a piece of paper across the desk and I said, "Draw me a tree." So when she drew her tree, I said, "Oh my goodness, there's been so much rupture in your life." In fact, she had changed school, I think it was 7 times. She used to steal cars and drive them and crash them. She was really known as a delinquent girl. And she'd been 3 years in a therapeutic center, and the mother said that nothing had changed. So when I saw this drawing, I said to her, I said, "Look, let's make a list of all the ruptures that have been in your life." So she did. The school she had left, the cars she'd broken, times she was brought up before the justice. And then she got to the very basic rupture in her life. When she was 3 years old, her father left the family and she had never seen him again. So after the first session, the mother phoned me and she said, "Oh my goodness," she was so interested that she really, really wants to come back. And she did come back. She actually found the father. And the father, when she found him, it wasn't that far away. He had a child of 3. And she connected immediately to this child and developed a relationship, and with the father and his new wife, and went back to school. She's now studying law in university, and she's doing well. Just out of the first drawing, it's perfectly obvious that there's such a state of rupture. This little boy of 6, he had adored his grandfather. They used to go fishing together, exploring the woods together, mushroom hunting together. They did everything together. He adored his grandfather. His grandfather died. Nobody was talking about the grandfather at the time, but this was his spontaneous drawing of a tree. There's an empty tree with the spirit going out, but grandfather left him with a very dynamic perception of life, and it was so interesting when he drew that, how his psyche sees the soul leaving. Now this is Mike. Mike is 28 years old when he comes. He comes for professional orientation, doesn't know what to do anymore. He's doing something he's not interested in. So I said to him, draw me a tree. When he drew this, I see this at the bottom. I count 4. And I said, what happened at the age of 4? So at the age of 4, his mother had committed suicide. And then we have 9 apples. What happened at the age of 9? At the age of 9, his father remarried. She was a lovely person. They had a very good relationship. But he had never mourned the loss of his biological mother. So Mike's process was not about professional orientation. It was about mourning his mother. And actually, his professional orientation became clear very spontaneously. So, people come, the spirit in their feet leads them to the door, and then they think they're here for something, one intention, but it's something else that appears, but simply because of a drawing. He could never have verbalized this. He could never have said. He didn't know that this was lodged in his psyche, that he had never mourned his original mother. These are drawings of children in the earthquake in Haiti. You can see the resonance in the tree of these children. I worked with a little nun there who had a school for girls. You see how the trees are affected by the earthquake. It's amazing. So, are there any questions? So I'd like you to get involved with trees and collect trees. If you're working with people, ask them to draw trees. Any age, any pathology. Very simple. Some people say, oh, I don't know how to approach that. All you do is say, draw me a tree. Very simple. I've actually never had anyone say no. Even my most complicated adolescents, they've all drawn trees. So I invite you to collect trees during the week, and you will have the checklist, and you can analyze the trees and bring back your discoveries next Saturday. Tree is a very precious drawing. Any questions? Could everyone draw a tree?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
And my name is Lisa Weinberg, and I'm in Washington State in the USA.
Wow.
And as you've been talking, part of what's come up for me in terms of working with this is the notion of paradox. And that on the one hand, you're working with something coming from the unconscious. On the other hand, you're depending on the thinking mind, the ego, to sort of set the process in motion. And then also your checklist is very analytical. So very much, imposing the thinking mind onto the imagery. And similarly, you talked about, just in your last slide, a drawing has no age. And yet the checklist indicates that one of the ways in which you're looking at the tree is in terms of age. And I very much believe that we can be attending to both, but I'm wondering in this technique, how, if at all, you work directly with those kinds of paradoxes.
Well, like the drawing of Mike with the tree, he needs an explanation. It's not sufficient. He needs understanding. So of course we have the analytical aspect, we have the explanation, but the age would correspond to the age of a trauma, the age of a difficulty, the age of a blockage. That's why we look for ages. Half of the tree may, these are guidelines. Of course, there are many other possibilities apart from the guidelines, but it's the feeling and intuition that's going to alert you or bring you to an insight. Many people have looked at Mike's tree and didn't see the 4 bars at the bottom. It does require insight. So the analytical is a guide, but as Jung says, scholarliness is not enough. You need the intuition of the heart. There's a mind in the background speaking to you through the drawing. And we're trying to get into a relationship with that mind in the background. And we do when we reveal something that the conscious mind doesn't know about. We get into a relationship. And then you'd be surprised when the unconscious feels heard and seen, a dynamic sets in. Something begins to move. So I don't know if I answered your question, but paradoxical or not, I think the reality is in the paradox myself, but that's a whole discussion as well. Reality is in the paradox. It's not in the logical ABCD linear process. Reality is in the paradox. Have I answered your question?
Well, it may be more of a conversation, and I want to respect our time here. I think in part where the question is coming from for me is just when you talk about dynamic, and that it is a dynamic process, and that the participant engages in that dynamic, and that part of that experience is necessarily, well, I shouldn't say necessarily for me, is sometimes the analytic, the ego, can get in the way of allowing what comes up. Sometimes what comes up can overwhelm. And so it's like working in the midst of that dynamic.
What comes up can overwhelm, yes, I'd say, in fragmented psyches. In neurotic psyches, we get dispersion. We'll look at that later. But the dynamic, yes, there's a dynamic in the psyche, and it depends on what we're going into next. It depends on the flow of psychic energy. So we're going into all that now. But when the conscious mind gets the insight, then it wants to expand its consciousness. It wants to understand more. There's a gratification in that. See Mike with his apples. He was very gratified with that drawing. He walked out about 5 inches taller. He was so happy to know where he is and what to do about it. So it's a mirroring situation. You're mirroring something in the unconscious that the conscious ego of the other person may not necessarily know about. So I think we can move on to the dynamic. Just have another question here. Now, the specific position of the functions around the mandala in relationship to the structure of the psyche. It's a whole story. Perhaps we can touch on that next week. Are we acting as translator? Everything is alive in spontaneous drawing. Thank you there for Nico. It feels like we're being invited to act as a translator, as a channel, as an alter ego. We have many different roles. We have many different roles. Okay, the mandala, I will keep that on my list for next week. Yes. Okay. We'll move on a little bit. I'd like to get through the next bit, and then we can have a break. So, we have tree with an owl. The owl is a symbol of wisdom, of knowingness. What does the owl know that's not accessible to consciousness? If we look at the branch growing out of the tree, it corresponds more or less to half of the tree's life. The tree is a symbol of growth and development of the person drawing, so we can surmise that about 3.5 years old, something eventful took place in the life of Sophie. If we look at the owl, she's pregnant. So we can surmise that when she was 3.5, another child was born in the family, which was true. So the symbol, the language of the psyche is a symbolic language. All traditions communicate through symbolic language. Alchemy, for example, is rich in symbolism, the beauty of the symbolism in alchemy. Symbols are not allegories, not signs, they're images of contents which for the most part transcend consciousness. We've still to discover that such contents are real, that they are agents with which it is not only possible, but absolutely necessary for us to come to terms. Symbols composed of its conscious and unconscious aspects, and therefore can never be totally defined rationally. Symbol communicates beyond the conscious mind and influences at a deep level. Jung had the highest regard for the power of symbols and their function in the psyche. He recognized the symbol as a carrier of psychic energy. Symbols are natural attempts on the part of the psyche to unite the opposites, but also personal and archetypal at the same time. So this is a little girl of 5. She had changed house 5 times in her little life, and her mother was moving once again. And she was a very short time in analysis, but you could see her tree was getting stronger. And she left with her tree. Sometimes we feel that the process is incomplete, but we can see that something has already changed. Spontaneous drawings and dreams produce a personally composed symbolic language as well as collective themes. By paying attention to the symbol formation in the unconscious, one participates in the symbolic life of the psyche. Symbol formation is natural, represents what is enduring and common to all of mankind, beyond race, culture, beyond evolution. Symbolic images lure one into the obscure regions of the psyche, to the light in the depths where healing and transformation take place. So you can draw a house. Perhaps take a few minutes to draw a house. After I'll give you a checklist for the house, you can also put this in your file. 2 minutes to draw a house. So I let you draw first, because afterwards, you know, when you've read through a checklist, you're alerted to what you're looking for. And it's easier to have your own drawing first. So so the checklists, so according to Jung, the house recurs very often as a symbol in dreams. Generally means the habitual or inherited attitude, the habitual way of, let's see this, the habitual way of, you can read that. Perhaps the way one lives with the whole family. This little girl of 8. She's adopted with her sister, and her father would collect her from after the session, and he was never interested in engaging. He was an engineer. He was very, very stiff. He wanted to collect his little girl and go. And she was adopted. They were very happy. She was adopted from India, her sister as well. They got on extremely well. And one day the father left. He fell in love with the secretary at his office and he left. And this little girl drew her house with 3 windows and one where the light went out. And when I showed this drawing to the father, I didn't say anything except that I showed it to him, and he cried. He was very moved by this drawing. He cried. So the drawing communicates what one cannot say with words. The child's drawing had a huge effect on him. He was a loving father. He did take care of them. He never went back to the house. But yes, it was a drawing that moved him very deeply. Very often children who do live in 2 houses, go to daddy at the weekend and stay with mommy during the week, very often have double roofs on their house. These are, of course, indications this little girl too has a double house. Usually is one house more important than the other, that's for sure, in the drawing. This is a 5-year-old. Sometimes you get the age of the child. This child is 7. She's a child in Togo in Africa. I worked with about 100 children in a school there, and no doors, no windows, no chimney. Actually, there's a family secret, and the secret is that the family, they all have AIDS. And of course, even amongst these children, AIDS is a stigma, and nobody talks about it. So we took the drawings of these 100 children, and we saw that there was a huge population of the children who had AIDS, or the family had AIDS. So it was very clear for me. I'm going to give this to you. I'm not going to go through it now, so that you can use it during the week. And then we'll go into something else. Okay, if there are any questions there, I think we can stop for a bit, take a break. And I was told the house tree person is something that people don't use anymore, so that's why I've brought it into this. It is, of course, excellent for the contacting the personal unconscious. And of course, the checklists are indications, you know, But when someone gets it, like the father of this child got that the window, the light had gone out, it it does strike a deep chord. Mm-hmm. And the idea is to expand your perception. When you look at a drawing again, you'll look at it differently. And that the basic indication is to expand your perception. And Jung did this, you know, he experienced and then he explained. That was his way. First of all, he experienced and then he explained. And he said he's not a theorist, he's an empiricist. Everything was based on empirical truth for Jung. And when people talk about Jungian theories, I say, no, not theories. These are concepts, not theories. Jung worked very, very hard to define his concepts. He accumulated a lot of material out of himself and out of his collaborators, his analysons. He did an awful lot of collecting of material. And then the lights went on in his own psyche. Like when he discovered the collective unconscious, it was, oh, wow, here we are. This is it. Actually, we're, by using Zoom today, where did this come from? Steve Jobs didn't invent Zoom. Steve Jobs didn't invent the internet. He connected to something that is underlying in the collective unconscious, the field of interconnection. So he produced something out of his own psyche that we evolve today. Okay, I propose we have a break. Are there any questions first before we go on? Okay, I think you need a break. So have your coffees and teas and whatever. And see you again in 10 minutes. Is that okay? 10 minutes. Then we go into.
Thanks, Patricia. So I have, it's about 12 after the hour here. So we will come back on at, you said 10 minutes. So 22 after the hour, whatever hour it is for everyone on. Okay.
Great.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. See you soon.
See you. Mm-hmm. Mm. So you okay? We're back. So, Nicole, you're practicing astrology at the moment?
Yes, I do.
Great. Okay.
I-
And did you have discipline before that? What were you doing before you began your astrology?
And I was in a completely different field, but I had to do with people somehow. I was working in the humanitarian world
Okay.
for ICRC, so many years.
CRC. Yes. Many people are shifting into something else. Have we, Doreen, are you practicing? Doreen Peasley?
Yes. Yeah,
Are
I'm a
you-
marriage family therapist.
Your
Practice.
family? It's great for families to get a perception of each other. It's delicate, but that would be a whole course. Yes, very exciting. Vera, are you working with people?
I was a, sorry. I'm a retired.
Hi, everyone. Are we getting echoes?
I am a
Sorry?
retired child and family therapist, and I worked for the last 20 years in trauma. And I'm interested in all of the drawing materials because when we did dream work, we used drawing,
Yes,
but I was not equipped to handle it.
yes. But just doing it is very therapeutic. Just doing it is very therapeutic.
There's feedback because both of these are on. Oh, okay.
Gina, are you working with people? Gina?
I am a. Oh,
Oh dear.
Okay, is it Vera? Sorry, 1 second. Vera, I'm just going to mute you. Okay,
Ah.
go ahead, Gina.
I'm a elementary school teacher. I work with students who speak a second language.
Right.
And I wanted to be an art therapist, but it was out of my means. So I didn't realize this was a course for therapists, but I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
Oh no, it's perfect. You don't have to be a therapist. It's perfect for your discipline as well.
Yes.
You know, I've done this course. I've done it with lawyers. I've done it in criminology. I've done it with business people. I've taught it in university in psychology, anthropology. Yes, I've done it in so many different. Lots of teachers have, of course, followed the course, and alternative medicine people. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm excited to collect all the trees from all the students this week.
Yes, it's very exciting to do that. Yes, please do.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Anna Marie, are you working with people?
I am, and I've been practicing for 34 years, and my specialty is loss and grief, and I got my PhD from Pacifica.
Great. Loss and grief, yes. There's a girl here, and there's someone who addressed recently the problem of cultural grief. Martina Femish has written a book on it as well. And I think it's something that we have to address more. Cultural grief, especially in a world where there's so much movement. You know, here all the East wants to come West, the South wants to come North. I think in America, the North wants to go South. A lot of people are going down South. So the whole world is in a movement, and there's a huge cultural grief. We have recently welcomed an Afghan family. We supported them, and we did everything we could to get them to Switzerland. It was a terrible journey through the inferno. But the cultural grief is very acute, very, very acute. And when you can never go back, it's also such a rupture. So it's really, yes, I'm very fascinated by what we can do for people suffering from cultural grief. Sorry, excuse me. Thank you. Marianne, sorry, excuse me. You want to say something, Anne-Marie?
No, I said thank you.
Okay, thank you. Marianne? Marianne, have you a practice? Are you?
There I am. I'm sorry, you asked
Yes,
me?
I was wondering if you have a practice. What field you're in?
Well, I'm not really in any field. I was a school teacher, and I did teach art and pottery, and then I married a potter. And so for the last 42 years, I've been working together with the potter and gardening. But I do remember having an extraordinary experience when I was teaching a grade 8 class, which the children were 12 years old, and I asked them to draw a picture of their house. And I had the most stunning, um, pictures, including one boy hanging from the rafters in a basement. It was just stunning. And ever since I've been interested in pursuing this, I wish I could work with children, but I think I may not be able to. So,
Yes, well, still even a back look upon, certain moments of consciousness for you.
absolutely.
Also precious. See, in the psyche, there's no time. We're outside of time and space. That's another dimension. I actually work outside of time and space with scientists. So,
Wonderful.
yes,
Wow.
Jung says a lot about outside of time and space. So, even our contribution, consciousness today is important. It's important. Thank you, Marianne.
Thank you.
Who have I got next? Vera? Isaac?
I've already responded.
I've spoken to Vera, yes, excuse me.
Yes.
Sorry. Juan, Vanak. Hello, Juan. Am I pronouncing it properly, Juan?
Yes, that's correct. So I would say a very good late evening. I'm a clinical psychologist practicing in Dubai. So
Okay.
it's 11:31 p.m. here in my time.
Yeah.
So I've been practicing as a clinical psychologist now for 17 years, working with trauma processing, utilizing many somatic modalities, and then on the other side also using art as a medium for processing. Yeah, and finding it extremely powerful, working on it on a non-verbal level.
Yes.
Where they do not necessarily have to share the story.
That's right. Don't have to share the
Yeah.
story. That's right. Thank you. That's very rich. How long have you been in Dubai for?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
It's a challenge to live in Dubai, I believe.
Absolutely. You were mentioning the cultural grief.
loss.
Working with an expat community, it's prevalent.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we should investigate this more and make people more conscious. Otherwise, it's just a rupture in the psyche.
Absolutely.
We have to go beyond the rupture and recuperate. So it's important. Yes, I also worked in Egypt, and it was the same. The expats and the loss of culture in Cairo.
Yeah.
Very interesting place to be, but still. However, expats tend to help each other a lot.
It's a different kind of community sense that forms with new narratives, new sense of community and a we that forms.
Yes.
But it's sometimes very transient, which then brings almost like a continuous grief, where the moment there's connection and a new community forms, ruptures happen. It's this continuous rupturing that we see.
Yes, which is very traumatic. Yes.
Yeah.
Your accent is Australian, is it?
South African.
South African, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, which part of South Africa?
I was born and raised just south of Johannesburg, but 10 years before we moved to Dubai, we stayed in Cape Town.
Cape Town, yes. You're near the drawings there. You're near the Drakensberg. You're near the Sand People. You're near
Absolutely.
the Paleolithic drawings, yes.
Absolutely. They're the cradle of mankind there in the West Rand. So many richness of human history.
Yes.
And we're our first language and way that we tell stories and accumulated our story through drawings on the rocks.
Absolutely, yes. Yes, I have visited many places, 40 grottos in France and the Kalahari. Yes, I traveled through the Kalahari looking for the Paleolithic drawings, which I found. Yes, it was very interesting. Yes, you've read Van der Post, have you? Lawrence Van der Post?
No.
Lawrence Van der Post was a friend of Jung's. He was Afrikaans. He was born there. And he wrote books on the Sand People, the Bushmen. The Heart of the Hunter, for example, is one. There's a whole series of his books. They are very compelling read and just really revives the heart of Africa. Van der Post came to the Institute. He was very close to Jung. He wrote a beautiful book, Jung's Last Years. It's a small book. It's beautiful. He's very equipped as a writer. He's also the godfather of. He was the godfather of Prince Charles in England, and Prince Charles is a Jungian. He introduced Prince Charles to Jung at the age of 15, and he educated Charles in a Jungian mentality. And Charles has actually lectured in America on Jung. So Van der Post, yes, he came to the Institute when I was there. He wasn't great as a lecturer. He was absolutely great sitting around the fire with a glass of wine and telling stories. That was his absolute art. So it was a very
in his element.
Yes, that was very rich experience. So I encourage you to read Van der Post, and everybody, if you want to read something very beautiful about Jung, it's Lawrence Van der Post, Jung's Last Years. So,
thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that.
Wow.
Sally Bennett, we haven't spoken.
No, we haven't spoken. Hello.
Hi.
I'm a retired medical doctor. I retired 14 years ago. My specialties were microbiology and infectious diseases. But my love was in postgraduate medicine with continuing and professional and personal development for junior doctors and peers. And then since then, I've been in a variety of roles, really walking with people as they explore their life journeys and explore who they really are. So I'm here because will be going out to Zurich next week for my second semester at the Institute on the further education program.
Brilliant, lovely, yes, wonderful. You know about Susan Bach, do you?
I know about her, but I've never met or heard. Oh, yes.
Yes, well, she was 1930s, but she invented art therapy in physical medicine. And she followed children with leukemia, cancer, and so on, and reveals the process of from illness to health or illness to regression. She was very devoted. Robert Hinshaw, who's in the Institute, knew her and supported her work like he supported mine. So the book is Lifespan.
Lifespan.
Yes.
Okay.
Lifespan is in the title. I can't remember exactly.
Okay.
But Lifespan is in the title. Susan Bach, B-A-C-H.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we use spontaneous drawing to reveal degrees in illness. I had a clinic who followed for 3 years the program on spontaneous drawing. I also had a psychiatric clinic who was converted to spontaneous drawing. The whole hospital did spontaneous drawing. And during 3 years also, they based their diagnosis on spontaneous drawing. So when they saw certain regressions, they didn't discharge. Yes, it's very interesting.
I mean, from a personal point of view, actually drawing and body work have been very helpful to me. I came upon them. I've been in analysis for a number of years, but I just was drawn to drawing and painting and body work and dance and movement and accessing feelings when you've worked in a very logical, rational, scientific, evidence-based, which ignores the wisdom of intuition and the body. I found it very, very liberating.
Yes, yes, wonderful. So you're going through the 4 functions.
Yes.
Which is what it's all about, isn't it? That we evolve through all the 4 functions. Lovely. Thank you so much.
Myself.
Oh, I'm not spoken to. Lisa, I think did you tell me you were working with people, Lisa?
Yes, I'm a psychotherapist, and I work exclusively with adults doing one-on-one work.
Okay.
And I've not trained as an art therapist or worked in that capacity, but had one very profound experience working with a client over an extended period of time, so quite a few years, who had some significant early childhood trauma and would literally dissociate in the office. And so I don't know how we came upon it, but I provided a sketch pad and a set of pastels, and she would sit there every session and draw as we engaged in the session. And not so much the imagery that came up, but the energy and the color and just the type of lines that came up provided grist for the mill. But I think more importantly, it was the activity itself that brought her into the room and into relationship with me.
Yes, wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful, yes. Can go far beyond words, can't it? Yes, the activity goes far beyond words. Talking about color, I haven't included color in this, but I had a group, and in the group there was a lady who was taking care of a gardery with very small children. And in the gardery there was a child of 3.5 who was hyperactive, couldn't sit still, anxiety, kept talking about the house is on fire, the house is on fire. And he would scribble in red and black and yellow and say the house is on fire, the house is on fire. It took one person all day just for this child. So he was very disrupting really the whole atmosphere in the gardery. So I asked them to get a pot of blue paint and a big drawing, 75 by 52 drawing sheet, and a big brush, and to paint the whole page blue. And the child did, and everything dropped away immediately. And it was such a miracle for the people who were working with this child. We never knew what it meant, the house is on fire. Was it a movie? Was it a dream? Was it a reality? We don't know. But the color, the influence of color, changed everything. And the story actually went around the whole of Lake Geneva that this child of 3.5 had transformed in one session. So yes, color is so important. I'm a very great fan of Kandinsky and the spiritual dimension of color. And I think sometimes we've had an Alzheimer patient who was over 70, and she did 7 rounds in different colors. And she put a word on these colors. And everybody was absolutely astounded because she was a very, very advanced case of Alzheimer. So yes, the influence of color without words, beyond words. Thank you for that. Thank you very much. Yes. Who have we got? We've got Wendy. Balconi.
Yes, hello. I'm an avid painter, drawer, sculpture, do all kinds of collaging, but I'm also in private practice as a therapist. And I just love the ability to connect the symbolic with the creative and then bring through those awarenesses that come in session through the patient's creative acts. And often, you know, work with writers, poets, people who paint, or they maybe that's not something that they do for a career, but it's something that they do, you know, as their own inner process, and we bring that to the work together. And I'm really appreciative of how you are making those connections to Jungian concepts. And I'm also a graduate of Pacifica, and I got a PhD in the somatics program.
Great. Lovely. Thank you. So you have a very wide field to explore and to work with. Yes, lovely. Thank you. Thank you so much. Who have I not spoken to? Laura Gallardo. Laura.
Hello.
Hi.
Laura. Hi. I am currently working in the world of grief. I'm working for a nonprofit in the world of grief. So I'm a marriage and family therapist. I've always been an artist. I began my life that way. And so I bring that into my practice. Well, I graduated from Pacifica as well, Graduate Institute up the road from me. I also was listening to some of the work that I could find on YouTube with you, and I'm particularly drawn to cultural.
Yes.
The cultural aspect. I'm bicultural, probably myself, and just finding how important that is to my. I had a grandfather who traveled to Point Barrow, and I have lots of images that come up for me of Inuit and the polar bear, and just a lot of images. So I find it rich.
Yes.
Very.
It's a wonderful world, the Inuit world, the northern spheres, the Arctic Circle. You know, our energies change as of the 72nd parallel because the electromagnetic field changes. So something shifts when you go that high. I stayed in a community on the 86th parallel, but I also work in Siberia. I work in Siberia. I work with shamans, and I work with scientists in Siberia. We work outside of time and space. So it's a whole story. But time and space change. As Jung says, they are elastic, and in the Arctic Circle, it's very different. And this, John Mallory wrote about the King of Thule, the writings, of course, Arctic Dreams, Barry
Lopez.
Lopez, yes, Lopez. Is your origin Italian or Spanish?
Although I think if you go way back, it's Italian.
It's Italian. Gallardo.
No, yeah, my family came up from Irapuato in Mexico. My family's Hispanic.
Yes, yes.
The guy,
compatible. Mhm. Okay, I wish you a trip to the Arctic. To that world. Mhm. Anyone else that anyone else? Who have I not met? Cherry, yes, please.
Hello, it's Sherry.
Cherry,
Hi, good to meet
hi.
you. Thank you for today. Yes, I am in private practice and have been for the last 15 or so years, but I've been in agencies before that in the field of working with trauma for children, women, and families for 28 years. So definitely very much in the expressive therapies realm, lots of sand tray, artwork, other embodied approaches to the release of trauma. And I'm also a student at Pacifica right now in the Jungian and archetypal studies for PhD. So it's good to see some survivors here as well of the program. But I was really drawn to this too, because as much as I'm immersed in and training others in expressive therapies, this is one particular area that I really didn't know that much about. So it's really wonderful to be bridging those depth psychology concepts, particularly Jungian, melding it with some of what I already do and hearing a fresh take on it. So I'm really enjoying that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Great. Yes, I wish you luck for your work.
Thank you.
Enjoy it.
Yeah, I do love it. It's intense, but I love it.
Yes, yes, they're good years.
Yes.
Roxana.
Hi, this is great. I'm loving it. So I'm a registered psychologist in Alberta. I'm kind of halfway between Edmonton and Calgary. I have a private practice. I work part-time in a medical clinic. And I started with sand play therapy, and it just sort of took me a whole nother direction. Now I'm doing all I can find on Jung, and I can't wait to get to Switzerland, actually. Oh, I was going to ask, I'm having trouble finding the book, Lawrence. Can you spell his last name? Thunder, and then
Laurence, Laurens, Laurence.
Oh, okay.
And then Van, VAN.
Okay.
DER. Yes, that's it. POST. Laurens.
Okay, great. Thank you.
LAUR. Laurens van der Post.
Okay, I will try that spelling.
Hard.
Thanks.
Jung's last years. Okay. Anyone else? Kelly? Haven't spoken to Kelly?
Hi, I'm maybe the only non-analyst. I'm not an analyst. I'm an artist. I'm also one of those expats. I've lived in Italy for 20 years, but I'm American. Let's see, I studied classical figurative drawing and painting, and then I guess a few years ago started to develop a more sort of I don't know what you would call it, maybe interested in more symbols and intuitive painting. So yeah, that's what has me interested in this spontaneous drawing. And I mean, I do spend time already doing, I guess, spontaneous drawing. And maybe have looked a little bit about, there was a woman, a Swiss woman, I can't remember her name, who did spend, I don't know, 30 years studying children's drawings, and maybe just published one book about it that I thought was really interesting. So yeah, that's what I'm doing here.
Okay, great. Which part of Italy? Are you still in Italy now?
Yeah, I live in Rome.
You're in Rome? La Bella Roma?
Bella Roma, yes. Not so far from you, yeah.
I worked in Assisi for 10 years on symbolism and frescoes.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yes, I had very very involved in Italy for a long time. Still, it's part of my life. Part of yes, my heart is in Italy, of course.
Yeah.
Yes, Rome is other. It's not quite Italy. It's Rome.
It's the beginning, the gateway to the south. Yeah.
Yes, Italy. Okay, thank you. Enjoy
Thank
it.
you.
Yes. Tracy Ann.
Hi, I am a clinical social worker in private practice here in Vancouver, BC, Canada. I'm also an artist, and so I do tend to, I specialize in trauma, but I do also, because I'm an artist, tend to attract artists. So in my practice, musicians, writers, painters, and so on. So I do sometimes incorporate into session, but mainly it's just helping people connect with their creativity. So this is an interest to me, the spontaneous. And I also recently shifted my own artistic practice to something more abstract, if you will, and did a series of mandalas based on the Great Round of the Mandala that Joanne Kellogg had developed, and specifically the stage 11, you know, after coming through a crisis and you're in that sort of more fragmented phase. And so painted a series of those as an invitation that, you know, we have the opportunity to create what is next after coming through all this chaos collectively and personally. So this, so what you're doing is it speaks to me currently so much. Yeah. Although I do find I tend to use a non-interpretive approach. So and this, it's helpful for me to see you working with some of the images and explaining how you work with that, because it less confining than what I had assumed. You know, because it reads very prescriptive, but you know, as you demonstrate, it is you know, more of a non-interpretive, it seems anyways, and allowing the creator to really create the meaning of it. Yeah.
Sure. Great, thank you. Vancouver is very rich in artists and painters and writers. I know it well. I go to Haida Gwaii, you know, the islands up north, to the Haida Indians, you know.
Beautiful. Yeah, I haven't been up that far, but one of the famous artists, Robert Davidson, is somebody who I admire greatly in his work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Haida, they're amazing.
Yeah.
Of course, you have the most beautiful museum in the world.
Yes.
In Vancouver.
Thank you.
The
Yeah.
Anthropological Museum is
Yeah. Yeah, I actually have a degree in anthropology as well. So at UBC there, where the museum is, so I'm familiar with it.
Fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Who have I not spoken to? Lindsay. Have I spoken to Lindsay?
Hi there. I'm not an analyst, so Kelly, you're not alone in that. I'm an astrologer like Nicole. I practice evolutionary astrology, and I'm currently in a program with a couple of psychosynthesis coaches in England, and have been incorporating psychosynthesis practice into my astrology. And I consider myself a creative person. I am an artist at heart, and trying to weave in that thread back into my life. And I felt drawn to this course, and here I am.
Great, great. Yes. Astrology runs very close on Jungian lines, you know, the Liz Green program and so on, what Nicole is following. It's based on archetypes and so on. So yes, it's very, Jung has a chapter on astrology in his volumes. Don't know how convincing it is, but the
Yes, I enjoy that.
He was looking for the archetypal patterns. Yeah, and the synchronicities. He was looking for the synchronicities when he wrote that. But it's a very interesting field. It's also endless. Astrology is endless. The cosmic spheres. Yes. Lovely. Thank you so much. Is there anyone I haven't spoken to? Marsha, Sonia, Charmaine. Charmaine?
Yes. I'm a retired clinical psychologist, retired just a couple of years ago. And for the last 15 years, since I stopped public work, clinic work, I've been singing and acting. But it was clear to me before I drew the tree, but since I drew the tree, it's become even clearer to me that I am really cut off from my unconscious. And I did a lot of expressive work, both personally and in my practice years ago, but I haven't really done anything. It's all been externally, even though both the singing and the acting can get me in touch with my unconscious. I haven't been doing it. And so anyway, I've left the somatic work and the plastic arts of exploration and even meditation and dreams. It's all gone by the way. I mean, I do a little bit, but it's really gone by the wayside. So, and it's distressing to me, and the way I'm living my life right now. And I'm clearly in the last, I don't know, sixth of my life or something like that. And with people dying around me and or failing. And so I hope that this will be an avenue of renewal.
Okay. Yes. We will get into relating to the unconscious, and I hope you can avail of that. And I think what we're going into next in the concept of psychic energy will help you as well to understand what's going on. So yes, hold on. You're in the right place at the moment. Yes. You've already opened the door. You've been curious to come into this course, so you've already opened the door. Trust that. Of course, there's an age when people drop away, when people die. I'm 75 this year, so I have seen so many deaths, especially since the beginning of COVID. It's been unreal. And I think some souls just don't want to live the future, They've been through another kind of dynamic in this life, and but yes, there's a time of separation, and it's also what we've been speaking of, grief, separation and grief. So yes, I hope you find some threads in this course that will really help you to connect. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Anyone I haven't spoken to? Doreen, Sonia Kasajan. You don't have to come if you don't want to. Your microphone's on. Voila, Sonia.
Hi all, I'm an NFT and I work with trauma patients, and I do incorporate drawing into my sessions. But then personally, I use drawing to kind of draw my dream images. And one thing that I'm struggling with to kind of it usually comes easily to me to kind of draw my dream images. But then one image that I'm struggling with, I'm not able to kind of, draw it for some reason. So I said, maybe this will be the place for me to kind of find out what's going on in my psyche. The image doesn't want to come out yet. It's not ready or whatever. So that's why I'm here.
Then find a symbol for the energy. We'll go into that later.
Okay.
We'll approach that, but find a symbol for the
Okay. Okay.
without
Mhm.
find a symbol for the energy. Anyone else that I haven't spoken to? Emily? Know where people are, what they're doing, what spheres they're working in. Anyone else I haven't spoken to? Emily, have we spoken? Okay. Is that it? Marcia. Right. Okay. Can we continue then? Marcia, have we spoken?
No, we haven't. Thank you
Excuse
for
me.
inviting me. I'm a trial lawyer. I've been interested in art therapy for a long time, and helps in many different ways. At the moment, I'm in Montecito, California, which means it's raining really hard and there's a flood evacuation warning, so I'm sort of staying attentive to the.
I can't hear you very well. It's very
Oh,
broken.
I'm sorry.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't. I can't fix that. I don't think. I was saying that I am currently in Montecito, California, where there's a potential evacuation warning due soon. So I'm just trying to be attentive to the weather, which is why I
Evacuation? For? Because of?
flooding and potential
Oh.
debris flow and that sort of thing going on.
What
Heavy
area
rain in
are you
California.
Yeah.
San Montecito, which is in Santa Barbara, really. So it's very near Pacifica and very near the mountains, which
Yes. You have to go up then.
perhaps I haven't gotten the final
Yes.
evacuation order, but
Yes,
this
I
would be
do.
my third one today, this week, if it happens. So anyway, I have a feeling it'll be fine, but I'm really touched by the comments of others, and I keep making notes about what to look into further, and the diversity of the group is really impressive, and I've really appreciated what we've done so far. I've been studying art for a few years in my spare time, and I'm sort of terrified by the idea of knowing what the problems are. So, but that's part of why I joined.
Okay, so you need to find a symbol for the fear because you can't work with being terrified.
No,
Find a symbol for the fear. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. Thank you, Marcia. Just
sure, thank you.
We'll be with you.
Thank you.
Countries. Kandinsky's. Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to say who they are, what they're doing? Have I spoken to everybody? Tracy Ann, have I spoken to you? Yes. Lisa, yes. Sally, yes. Okay, I think we just go on. I'm going to share the screen again. Thank you so much. It's really interesting to know who you are, what you're doing, where you're going. We will work on trauma, especially next week, because for trauma, we have to go deep. We have to go deep into the collective unconscious. And to recycle the energies, yes, we have to work on that. So this exercise is about drawing a person. Yes, just take 3 minutes to draw a person. And then I'll give you a checklist, and then during the week you can see collect drawings and practice and see what they reveal for you. So please take 3 minutes to do your drawing of a person. Okay. I'm sure it's not enough, 3 minutes, but it's enough to get started. So I'm going to open this again. So the drawing the person does correspond to two aspects. We have the neurological integration corresponds to body image. And we also have the psychological aspect concerning the development of the sense of self, the narcissism of the personality, the state of the ego. So the parts of the body are symbolic, pertain to different psychological attributes. Person drawing includes the basic attitudes to life, introversion, extroversion, reflects the means to express oneself and to communicate, illustrates the standpoint of the self and the world in relation to others. So this is what Jung writes about discovering his own sense of self. So he says, I was taking the long road to school from Klein-Honingen, where we lived, to Basel, where suddenly, for a single moment, I had the overwhelming impression of having just emerged from a dense cloud. I knew all at once, now I am myself. It was as if a wall of mist were at my back, and behind that wall there was not yet an I. But at this moment I came upon myself. Previously I had existed too, but everything had merely happened to me. Now I happened to myself. Now I knew I am myself now. Now I exist. Previously I'd been willed to do this and that. Now I willed. This experience seemed to me tremendously important and new. There was authority in me. So Jung's describing his discovery of his own sense of self. So here we have neurological problems, very obvious. Here too, this 10-year-old, see disjointedness, difficult in integration. So that's the neurological aspect. And then we have the sense of self. Bertie is 5 years old, identified with daddy. Then we get identification as well. Who is identified with who? Easy to observe. And of course, peer group identification. It's a phase that's very important. So I'm going to send you the list for the check, list for the person with the others. And then there's a next exercise. Am I going too fast or is that okay? There's a next exercise. Maybe less involved. Because these are the exercises that you can practice during the week, or you can elaborate, extend, amplify for yourselves. So the next exercise, are we ready? Mm-hmm. Next exercise is draw a drawing with a mountain, a path, and something of your own. It should take not so long, 3 minutes. Because I want to get through the whole concept of libido. Okay, I think that should have gone quicker. Path and something of your own. Right. I think we're ready to move on. Now, before we talk about the mountain and the path, I'm going to talk about what we said at the beginning. Structure of the psyche is based on attitudes, functions, and levels in the psyche. Dynamics of the psyche are based on psychic energy or libido, which has a movement or flow, which Jung refers to as progression and regression of libido. He says, life has always seemed to me like a plant that lives on its rhizome. Its true life is invisible, hidden in the rhizome. So this is the model of the matrix, the unconscious, from which the psychic energy proceeds. Psychic energy moving forwards, flow, going towards the outer world, adaptation. It's called, Jung refers to it as progression. When progression has been attained, then there's regression. Goes back into the source, seeks once again energy from the source, and progresses to another level. When that has been accomplished, achieved, or saturated, then energy comes back into the unconscious, proceeds again. So this pattern of progression and regression goes on all through life. In regression, the energy is redirected towards the matrix, the unconscious. Here it refreshes itself before it begins its return towards the concrete world and conscious life. This process occurs naturally at every age, stage of development, especially noticeable at times of change in orientation, or at times of readjustment when big decisions are being taken. When one meets a crossroads in life or in depression, it may happen that, as Jung says, a complete orientation towards the inner world becomes necessary until such a time as inner adaptation is attained. Once the adaptation is achieved, progression can begin again. Jung says it's the most important concept in psychodynamics. So in a drawing, we have progression is always to the right. It doesn't matter if people are right-handed, left-handed, if they write from top to bottom or left to right to left. Archetypally, it's the same. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. The images to the right tends towards the conscious sphere. Example of regression in libido in a drawing. Images to the left tend towards the unconscious. Drawing on a vertical plane indicates a statement. On a horizontal plane indicates a process, a movement of psychic energy. Ego lies in the center. It's a little girl of 5. She was out in the woods with her mother. Her sister pushed her and she fell and she called for her mother. Ego lies in the center of the drawing. Psychic energy can rise. Tendencies may indicate hopes, aspirations. For anorexics or people who lack body image, it can be extracting out of matter. Psychic energy can recede or descend. Direction downwards tends towards the unconscious as in suppression or depression. Progression may not always be positive. Regression is not always negative. Successive progression may correspond to a flight forward, a refusal to turn towards any call to inner adaptation. Regression may belong to retreat from outer confrontation, from adaptation to the environment. At every stage of development, adaptation is called for according to inner and outer circumstances. Psychic energy must flow according to what Jung calls its own gradient, seeking its own goal. So we can have a blockage in libido. As child of 5, we can see that this is advancement towards the right is blocked. When this occurs, the therapeutic aim is to provide the possibility for the libido to return to a state of progression once again. Here we see the child. She's on the verge of descent or aggression, as the drawing indicates. We could call this an expression of fear. Sinking into the unconscious can be overwhelming. Eventually, this is sinking into lower spheres of the unconscious. Actually, this child, she was 5. She was in school, and the director decided, he said, this is not a school for mentally deficient children. He wanted her to go to an institution. So I asked him if he would give me a month, and he said yes, he would keep the child for another month. So through her drawings, I discovered that she was very often drawing spirals on the level of her stomach, or contractions, so there was no stomach left. And I called the mother, and the mother explained that this child as a baby had suffered from colic, very, very severe colic. She screamed day and night. The doctor told her it was normal. The mother simply couldn't cope, and she simply gave up. So I sent this little girl to the osteopath. Her whole viscera was completely in knots. Of course, this was creating a traction on the spinal cord, which was creating a traction on the brain. So it was released with osteopathy. And this child progressed very quickly afterwards. We could see a resurgence, sense of self. Yes, she progressed extremely well in school afterwards. And this could have stayed, the cause could have been unknown all this child's life even. So yes, understanding and recognizing the state of libido in the psyche and its movement are essential for diagnosis of psychic conditions. I think one should view with philosophic admiration the strange paths of the libido and should investigate the purposes of its circuitous ways. It's really important. So in myths, all myths talk about the patterns of libido. They illustrate aggression and regression. In myth, the hero must abandon the known world and regress, descend, or go beyond towards the unknown spheres. Theseus, in the Greek legend, who descends into the labyrinth, where he is obliged to embark on the journey towards the Minotaur, is a model of this pattern. This is a 9-year-old who drew my Minotaur for me. Minotaur theme also corresponds to initiation. Every initiation requires a descent of libido into the deeper spheres of the unconscious. So what does our mountain represent? Symbol for the path of life, for progression or regression, for direction. Symbol of perception of the future, of ambition, of success. Noting difficulties on the way, anticipation of the future. Of many means. What to look for, is there a summit? Are there several summits? Is there coherence? What's on the path? What does it symbolize? What is the personal symbol? What is significant as regards the life of the person? So these are a few examples of mountains with paths. This lady is 46, and she had a straight path all her life, get married, bring up her beautiful girls, and progress. And then one day her husband just announced that he was leaving, and that created a huge rupture. And for the past 5 years, she's creating a new path in life. It was a drawing that spoke very much to her. And there's no connection between this and this. This is a path that was very clear and very distinct, but it ended with problem of illness. Now this is an 8-year-old. Now, you see the path has nothing to do with the mountain. She actually, at 4, when her sister was born, she never accepted the sister be born. She felt completely usurped, out of place, and completely lost the thread. Became a very angry, spiteful little girl. Father brought her to therapy, worried that she had pleasure in hurting others. But she's on track at the moment. So the mountain too can be very revealing. This 42-year-old woman, she left Switzerland, went back to her country, and she became a huge success in what she was doing. This drawing was about 6 months before she left. So drawings speak louder than words. So during the week, you can also practice. That's 4 drawings. Tree, house, person, and mountain with a path. And see where you pick up the patterns of libido. In drawings, we also look for major point of focus, like we said, the ego. We look for what's incoherent. This is incoherent. This is a battle scene. Ego's in a state of battle, story of Bobby. If we have time, I'll talk about next week. This is incoherent. 2 hearts, one with an arrow. A tree with something trying to grow out of it. So we look for incoherence, is the unconscious wanting to have its say. We can get dispersion when there's no obvious link between one image and the other. And we can get fragmentation. When we get this speckled, usually this is what we get in fragmentation. It's an 8-year-old who draws a person. Psychotic child. So are we okay with that? We have 4 drawings to practice during the week. I will send the checklists. Lauralee, we can circulate the checklists to people.
Yeah, Absolutely. What we'll do is when you send us the checklist, we'll send out a group email to everyone so they can get that.
Okay, thank you. Super. Is that okay for everyone? What I wanted to get to was so we know that Jung, contrary to Freud, who was a theoretician, was an empiricist. It meant that Jung observed the psyche in himself and his patients and found structures within which he defined in his works. He named archetypes patterns, symbols carriers of energy, intuition an organ of unconscious perception, instincts activators of unconscious processes. He defined the personal unconscious, the collective unconscious, the psychoid spheres of the psyche. So next week we're going to look at the collective unconscious. So he attributed the greatest importance to the image itself, believing that once the emotions were taking form in images, the conscious mind can actively participate in recycling the energies attached to the images, subsequently return to a state of equilibrium. Psyche wants expression. Psyche wants to express itself. It's the ego that blocks the connection. The psyche is speaking, unconscious speaking all the time. So Jung says, to the extent that I managed to translate the emotions into images, I found the images were concealed in the emotions. I was inwardly calmed and reassured. As a result of my experiment, I learned how helpful it can be from the therapeutic point of view to find the particular images which lie behind emotions. What Jung says about spontaneous imagery, as in dreams or images evoked by intention. In the latter case, you choose a dream or some other fantasy image and concentrate on it by simply catching hold of it and looking at it. You can also use a bad mood as a starting point and then try to find out what sort of fantasy image it will produce, or what image expresses this mood. Jung is always looking for the image, the symbol, which will carry psychic energy. You then fix this image in the mind by concentrating your attention. Usually it will alter as the mere fact of contemplating it animates it. Now we have to understand, you look at a bear, and the mere fact of contemplating the bear animates. You'll find other images coming in. The alterations must be carefully noted down all the time, for they reflect the psychic processes in the unconscious background. So if you note what's going on, then you become conscious of these psychic processes in the unconscious background, which appear in the form of images consisting of conscious memory material. In this way, conscious and unconscious are united, just as waterfall connects above and below. So important. Participation, consciousness of the image creating faculty of the psyche itself. So I want you to find an image for a problem or a difficult situation, not an image of a person. It must be a symbol for the sensation one feels when thinking of the difficulty. Feel and live the energy that the symbol evokes. So for the person, draw a symbol for an emotion, a difficult situation, or a feeling of blockage. For the person, Charmaine, was it? No, who was talking about not finding their unconscious? Charmaine.
It was.
Yes, Charmaine.
Yes.
So I encourage you for that blockage to sit with the energy that you feel and find a symbol for that energy. It can be anything. It can be an animal, it could be a stone, it could be a thing, it can be anything. Symbols are carriers of psychic energy. The symbol allows energy in the psyche to move. So we don't work on the problem, we work on the symbol. I never address symptoms. I always look for the causes, but I don't work with symptoms. So find a symbol. It may not happen, it may not come up now, but it's something you can do for yourself this evening, tomorrow, during the week. Find the symbol for something, difficulty, a situation, a blockage, find the symbol. And then draw a symbol for its opposite. A broken heart, a heart in the sun. So that's something you can practice during the week. Anything where you feel uncomfortable, you feel stuck, where your mind's a blank, you've no idea. You want to embark on a project, you want to know what your thesis is. It's the blockage that you find the symbol for. Because there's energy, you feel the energy in that blockage. You feel where the libido is stagnating, where it won't move, it won't progress. It's something you can do for yourselves with repetition during the week. Jung says, my speech is imperfect, not because I want to shine with words, but out of the impossibility of finding those words. I speak in images, with nothing else can I express the words from the depths. I think it's perfectly clear. Images are food for the psyche. The psyche produces spontaneous imagery all the time. If we call upon our psyche to produce the symbol for what's blocked, what needs to progress, psyche responds. It's the ego unconscious dialogue. Jung wrote the volume 7, even ego unconscious dialogue. Very simple to read. The unconscious psyche has a capacity for creating movement born out of itself. Why don't we know this? It's so simple. It's not a system which reacts only to already existing outer factors, but can, without traceable causal impulse, produce something new out of itself. I wonder, do we believe that the psyche can produce something new out of itself? Has a capacity for spontaneous movement, which in many philosophies and religious systems is otherwise only attributed to the divinity, the first mover. That was von Franz who said that, yes. That was von Franz. The conscious psyche has a capacity for creating movement born out of itself. Psyche is a cosmos. It's illimited. The only thing that blocks is the ego relationship to the psyche. What to do when the libido has resorted to deeper levels of the unconscious and the ego feels powerless? Libido can never be apprehended except in definite form. This is really important. Libido can never be apprehended except in definite form. That is to say, it is identical with fantasy images. We can only release it from the grip of the unconscious by bringing up the corresponding fantasy images. So allow fantasy to be. No critical mind. Take what comes. Welcome what comes. Even the most ridiculous for the ego mind, doesn't matter. Psyche has an intention. The ego has a direction in life. Psyche has an intention about your life. So participation with the unconscious is called the transcendent function. I became aware that the unconscious undergoes or produces change. Only after I had familiarized myself with alchemy did I realize that the unconscious is a process, that the psyche is transformed or developed by the relationship of the ego to the contents of the unconscious. It's so simple, isn't it? Just relate to the unconscious. Jung says if you just live your life, you get up, you go to work, you eat your breakfast, you come home, you look at the television, go to bed. He says then your life is wasted. But the spontaneous drawing reveals some preoccupation on the part of the unconscious. The aim is to acquire our conscious participation in what is revealed, or as Jung says, constellated. This conscious attention activates a dynamic process in which the unconscious responds to the ego attitude. We may refer to this ego unconscious dialogue. I'd like you to practice that during the week so that you get to the point of believing it, knowing it, integrating it, understanding it. Jung describes time when psychic energy descends into the unconscious and remains blocked. He refers to this as the night sea journey, the dark night of the soul. That can happen at any time of life, at any age. Maybe when one reaches a crossroads or a time of unsurmountable difficulty, or simply at the turn of age, in midlife crisis, or in aging. Characterized by depression, hopelessness, loss of orientation, profound sadness, even profound despair. It's also called the dark night of the soul. Every life becomes a time for night sea journey. And psychic energy regresses, and the regression continues over a certain length of time. When progression is inhibited and no longer occurs, the ego finds itself in a state of powerlessness regarding its capacity to handle the demands of the outside world and the immediate environment. Former interests drop away. Activities which were previously stimulating no longer hold any attraction. Relating to others may become a source of stress or boredom. There may be a shying away from the world, a lack of energy for normal everyday tasks, and even difficulty in rising in the morning to face the day. Clinically, this may be defined as a state of depression. But Jung saw that this state of regression can actually be meaningful, and that its aim is to lead to the possibility of discovering other unexpected dimensions within oneself. So I think we just have time to, are there any questions? Are we still on track here? So I'm just going to talk about one of these states of depression. So you're going to have a lot to practice with this week. The story of Janie. Now Janie is 62 years old. She's been the PA for a man, very important man, running a global worldwide company, and she's been devoted to her work all her life. And all of a sudden, the company was bought over, and she's given a few days to clear up her desk and go. And Jenny was never married. She has no family members alive. She's a very isolated and lonely person. And her depression ran very deep. So this is her first drawing, where she describes her sensation of blockage and loneliness. We can observe that the ego is in the center, so we don't have splitting, dispersion, fragmentation. Then in this state, there's a lack of energy for life. Janie feels her path has always been difficult, that to bear the burden has been her fate. There's no possibility of change or hope for a new life. She's in a very dark place. totally lost. She says the most alive part of her is when she's in tears. It's only in tears that she can feel herself through the numbness. She took to drawing immediately. She was a person who didn't use words so much. She wanted to draw. Drawing was an activity she wanted to really connect with. Most of the drawings, some of the drawings were done within the hour, and other drawings she did and brought to the hour. But she longs for the stars. And she wants to leave this plane. And then she draws this drawing as the 9 holes of hell, and she claims that she knows all of them. But in her drawings, this is Janie herself, we seem to observe a certain dynamic. As the outer world is empty and void, the inner world takes on color and meaning. Jenny begins to take her inner world seriously and draws some of her dream figures, which she feels may be significant. So in this dream, Jenny was on an island far away in a strange sea. And as she expands on this dream theme through active imagination, she discovers that she's not alone on her island, but she's accompanied by 2 helpers. And we see that there's a vision of a new shore, a new earth. So in her depression, she feels that she's been flung into outer space, lost all contact with the earth and daily life. She realizes that to surface again from the depths, she must ground to gather more energy. She has the idea that she needs to grow roots to be able to come back to earth and life. In another dream, Jenny meets a green man. So he's a kind of a pan figure, which brings her a sensation of joy and solidity. She discovers that a kind of curiosity is awakening in her through her dream figures. She seems to be gathering strength to connect with nature and the elements. On the outside, Jenny is making some contacts and has even adopted the abandoned dog, which she calls Dante. This green man actually made her laugh. It was the first time she had laughed. She said, I don't know how long it is since I've ever laughed. Since I've laughed. Felt like I would never laugh again. And little by little, she develops a desire to rid herself of the sensations of weightness and blockage. She relates this to pushing a black wall. With effort, some new light can begin to pierce the darkness. And this was a dream. Eventually, in a dream, Jenny is visited by a red bird. She has a back room in her house, which she has forgotten and neglected for a very long time. She finds this bird very, very beautiful, so beautiful that no drawing could ever depict its loveliness. So she still feels she has a mountain to climb, but as her energy moves into progression, her desire and curiosity for life begins to awaken. She feels willing to attempt the climb. There's a summit in sight. And beyond the summit. So this is to do with the transcendent function, where the unconscious and conscious standpoints, confrontation of the 2 positions generates attention charged with energy and creates a living third thing, not a logical stillbirth, but a movement out of the suspension between the opposites, a living birth that leads to a new level of being, a new situation. Process requires relating to rather than analyzing the material. is not absolutely necessary for the process of confrontation itself to become conscious in every detail. I'd say consciousness just comes spontaneously on its own. So there was reduction of the persona. In the outer world, Janie began to change her attitude and her way of relating. She began to find pleasure in her newfound freedom as she could manage her days as she pleased. She eventually decided to reduce her persona, phenomena which Jung describes, which may occur later in life with an intrapsychic change. The attachment to the outer world, and especially to the image one presents to the world, becomes less accentuated in favor of a more meaningful inner connection to the self and the unconscious. In this phase, one may feel guided as if the ego is no longer the determinant, but something deeper is guiding the change. Jenny developed a new sense of well-being and began to find contentment in her renewed sense of self. She came to the conclusion that now she feels better than ever before and that she owes the change to her dark night journeying. Jenny is now retired and lives in peace with Dante in a small village in the outskirts of town. She says she's not afraid of dying now, but especially not afraid of living either. The treatment of neurosis is not a kind of psychological water cure, but a renewal of the personality, working in every direction and penetrating every sphere of life. Now and then it happens in my practice that a patient grew beyond himself because of unknown potentialities. And this became an experience of prime importance to me. In the meantime, I had learned that all the greatest and most important problems of life are fundamentally insoluble. They must be so, for they express the necessary polarity inherent in every self-regulating system. They can never be solved, but only outgrown. I therefore asked myself whether this outgrowing, this possibility of further psychic development, was not the normal thing, whether getting stuck in conflict was pathological. Everyone must possess that higher level, at least in embryonic form, and must, under favorable circumstances, be able to develop this potentiality. When I examined the course of development in patients who quietly, as if unconsciously, outgrew themselves, I saw that their fates had something in common. The new thing came to them from obscure possibilities, either outside or inside themselves. They accepted it and grew with its help. I wanted the healing process to grow out of the person's own personality, not out of suggestions of mine. That would have only a passing effect. I wanted to protect and preserve my patient's dignity and freedom so that he could live his life by his own volition. Voila. If there are questions during the week, you can, of course, contact me. So, we've come to an end for this evening. I hope you're not exhausted. I hope it's not been too much. Thank you for your input. Next week, we will have a return of your experiences that you gather during the week. And if you're not working with people, or even if you are working with people, I encourage you to become conscious of the spontaneous imagery formation in your own psyches. And I encourage you to keep up the belief in the development of the ego relationship with the unconscious, which is so precious. It's not only a personal quest, it's also a collective quest, because we are all contributing in our attitudes and our work to the collective unconscious today. Collective unconscious is coming much closer than before. There were days when you couldn't even mention it because people didn't know what you're talking about. Now most people do know what you're talking about. So we are participating in life with a capital L. We're participating in evolution. We are what Jung calls civilization in transition. It's perfectly clear. If it's not clear, we have to wake up and realize it. So know that some problems are not solvable, but we can grow over and beyond them. That's what Jung calls the process of maturation. And the process of maturation is our individuation. We individuate by becoming more and more mature. So that's where we are, and we're all going somewhere, even if we feel blocked. And we're all participants. And thank you very much for joining this course. And next week we will go deeper. So you have a lot to practice. If there's any comments, please. I think, Laura, people may be tired by now.
Yeah, Patricia, I just want to say thank you so much. This has just been a fascinating and deep journey that you are walking with us all on. And I am just so pleased and thrilled. Your material, your case studies, I'm going to be sitting with these stories that you've shared with us of the incredible work that you have done with your clients, these young children. I think there's such a powerful illustration of the transformational power of the creative unconscious that I think we have yet still to really, I feel like, articulate that out into the larger world. Even within the Jungian world, we revert to an intellectual escapism, but yet there is this inherent generative forward-moving dynamic within the creative unconscious that's available. So thank you, because your work, there's an ancient phrase that I kept thinking about as you were leading us through. It's in the sacred scriptures. There's a phrase that is repeated over and over. Some of you may be aware. It says, "For those who have ears to hear, hear. For those who have eyes to see, see." And it really speaks to, I think, an ancient wisdom that understood that we have within each of us this space and this place, a holy place that's always speaking. But we have to develop and cultivate the eyes and ears to see and hear. And your work is bringing that to, I think, an entirely new depth for all of us. So thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for just being a wonderful community. Please feel free to email us if you have any questions. We will get the paperwork and the guides that Patricia has been talking about. We'll get that out to you on either Monday or Tuesday at the latest, to each of you. And then we'll see you next Saturday.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patricia. Have a wonderful
Enjoy your
weekend,
day.
everyone.
Thank you. Thank you
Take
so
care.
much. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Laura.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Bye-bye.